I was 28 when everything finally snapped, but looking back, the signs had been there since we were kids. My little brother Josh was 6 years younger, and even though we grew up in the same house, it felt like two different families. I did everything right: honor roll, college on a scholarship, worked all through school. Josh skated by with C's and got cheered on like he cured cancer. Our dad, Walter, ran a successful roofing company. Tough guy, self-made. He never hid that he had more in common with Josh. Dad and Josh bonded over sports and cars. Me? I was always too serious. Even my mom, Donna, never really challenged the imbalance. When I graduated college summa cum laude, they gave me a Hallmark card and a mug. When Josh passed his GED at 20, they threw a barbecue for 40 people. Josh finally earned his mechanic's certificate from the trade school in May. Dad was over the moon, like he got into Harvard. They threw a party. Relatives came in from out of town. Mom cooked her full spread. I helped clean and prep everything like usual. At dinner, Dad gave a toast about hard work and grit, and how proud he was of Josh. Then came the big reveal, a brand new Ford F-150. My jaw dropped. I'd bought my own car with 3 part-time jobs. Dad never even changed the oil for me. The room exploded in cheers, like it was a game-winning touchdown. Josh looked like he just won the lottery. I couldn't breathe. I felt my face go hot. That wasn't fair. It never had been. When the noise died down, Dad finally looked at me, handed me an envelope. "Here," he said, like it was a casual gesture. I stared at it. "What's this?" My voice didn't sound like my own. He didn't answer, just sat back, took a sip of his beer. I opened it slowly. Inside was a rent bill, $950 due next week. I didn't know what to say at first. I looked up, trying to keep my voice steady. "You're serious?" Dad didn't flinch. He just took another sip. "You're a grown man with a job. Time to pay your share." I let the words hang in the air between us for a second. I looked at Mom. She was busy cutting into her mashed potatoes, not meeting my eyes. I felt my hands start to shake. I pushed the envelope back toward Dad. "Are you seriously kidding me, after everything? You give Josh a truck like he's some kind of god, and I get a rent bill?" Dad didn't react. Just kept his eyes on me, like he was waiting for me to be the one to break. Like he didn't have any part in this. I was done. The anger I'd been shoving down for years, all of it, everything I'd swallowed, snapped into a single point. "You never even change my oil," I said, quieter than I meant. "But you're handing him a truck like it's the greatest thing in the world." Josh shifted in his chair, uncomfortable, but didn't speak up. He'd never said anything when Dad treated me like an afterthought. And right then, I hated him for it, even though I knew it wasn't his fault. Dad's face stayed hard, his eyes colder than I'd ever seen them. He's just starting out. He needs support. I needed support too. I wasn't shouting, but it felt like I was. "I worked my ass off through college. I paid my own way, and you—" I stopped myself. I didn't need to hear the excuse. I knew it already. "You never gave a damn about me or anything I did." Mom finally looked up. Her face was flushed, like she knew what was coming, but she stayed quiet. "Josh needs this," Dad said again, quieter now. "You've always been fine on your own." "Yeah, well, maybe I needed something. Maybe I needed you to show up for me for once." My voice cracked on the last word, but I didn't back down. "Instead, you kept handing him trophies, and I just had to keep proving I was good enough. But it's never enough, is it? Not for you." Josh stared at the table. He didn't know what to say. He couldn't. Dad sighed. I saw the tiredness in his eyes. "I'm not going to do this with you tonight." I didn't want to do it either, but I wasn't done. "You don't get it, do you?" I let the words go, not holding back anymore. "You've always been the one who gets to pick who's worth it, and it sure as hell wasn't me." Mom looked like she might say something, but then she didn't. "I'm done." I stood up so fast I knocked over my chair. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, and I just needed to get out of that room, away from all of them, away from the disappointment. "Where are you going?" Josh finally asked. His voice was small, unsure. I didn't look at him. "I'm done." I didn't wait for anyone to say anything else. I grabbed my jacket off the back of the chair and walked out the door. After I walked out, I didn't go far. I found Dad in the garage like I knew I would. He was leaning over the workbench, fiddling with something, probably a busted piece of equipment or a truck part he never got around to fixing. It didn't matter. I stood in the doorway for a second, just watching him, trying to figure out how to even start. Finally, I said it. "This isn't right." Dad didn't look up. "What isn't?" "The double standard, the way you treat me and Josh." I crossed my arms, standing firm, even though my chest was tight. "I did everything you asked, and it wasn't enough. And then you throw him a parade for passing a test. A test, while I bust my ass for everything I've got, and you don't even give me a single high five." He put down whatever he was holding, finally facing me. His eyes were tired. "Josh needs support," he said, like it was a statement of fact. "You've always been fine on your own." That was the line I'd heard all my life, the one that always made me feel like I didn't matter. But not this time, not after everything. "Don't do that. Don't act like I didn't need support. I needed it. I wanted it. But you never gave it to me." Dad just stared at me for a second, his jaw tightening, but he didn't say anything, so I pressed harder. "When I graduated, what did I get? A travel mug. No party, no truck. Hell, you didn't even congratulate me. But Josh, you throw him a damn parade because he passes a test. You buy him a fucking truck. It's not fair, and I'm done pretending it is." He leaned in, his voice low and steady, but it cut deeper than anything else. "Because Josh is worth it." I froze. The words hit like a punch to the gut. I didn't know what to do with them. My body tensed, but I couldn't move. All those years of working harder than anyone, trying to prove I was worth something, and he just told me, flat out, that I wasn't. "Are you serious?" My voice cracked on the words, and for the first time in a long time, I couldn't hold the anger back. "After everything I did for this family, after everything I did to make sure you were proud of me?" He didn't flinch, just stood there, waiting for me to finish, like he had all the time in the world, like my pain was something he could ignore. I stepped back, shaking my head, feeling like I might collapse under the weight of it. Years of being the reliable one, the provider, the good son, none of it mattered. My voice barely made it out, but I pushed it through anyway. "I was never good enough for you." Dad didn't say anything, didn't apologize, didn't try to justify himself. He just stood there, looking at me like I was the one who was wrong. I couldn't stay in that garage, couldn't stay in that house. I turned and walked out the door, through the kitchen, past Mom, who was still sitting at the table. She looked up at me, but didn't say anything. She never did. That night, I packed a duffel bag, grabbed my keys, and headed for Sam's place. It wasn't much, but it was better than staying under that roof any longer. I didn't sleep, not really. Just stared at the ceiling of Sam's couch, hearing the voices of my parents echoing in my head, trying to figure out how I had ended up here, in this position, so far removed from the family I thought I belonged to. I left before sunrise. Sam let me crash at his place for a few weeks. His couch wasn't much, but it was better than sitting in my parents' house pretending everything was fine. I'd get home from work, throw my bag down, and just lie there in the dark, trying to forget what happened. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. After a couple weeks, I found a one-bedroom apartment in a sketchy part of town. The building smelled like mildew and weed, and the hallways were always too quiet. But it was mine. No more pretending, no more expectations. It wasn't much, but it was the first place I'd had where I didn't have to answer to anyone. I started working full-time as a dispatcher at a 911 call center. The pay was low, the stress was high, but I was good at it, real good. It was like a switch clicked in my brain. I could handle the chaos. I could stay calm when everyone else was losing their heads. It felt like control I hadn't had in years. The first week, my parents didn't call. Not once. I didn't call them either. Josh sent one text a few days after I left. "Where'd you go?" I didn't reply. I knew what he was asking. He didn't get it. And I wasn't in the mood to explain. I kept to myself. I wasn't used to being alone, but after a while, I realized it wasn't as bad as I thought. I started hitting the gym after work, running myself into the ground. It was a new rhythm. I'd never taken care of myself like that. I didn't have to hold anyone else up, didn't have to be the strong one for once. I could just breathe. Sometimes I'd take long drives late at night, aimlessly cruising the streets, windows down, just to clear my head. I didn't need to talk to anyone. I didn't need anyone to tell me what to do or how to feel. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't carrying a load for everyone else. I missed home sometimes, the idea of it. The warm dinners, the way Mom always tried to make everything feel normal, even when it wasn't. But I didn't miss the constant feeling of being invisible. The way I was always the reliable one, the one who had it all together. Except I didn't. I was tired of pretending I did. So I didn't go back. I didn't chase any of them. Maybe they'd call eventually. Maybe they wouldn't. But for once, it didn't matter. I was living on my own terms. 2 months later, Josh called. I was sitting on my couch, the TV off, just staring at the wall when his name flashed on my phone. I hadn't heard from him since I left. I thought about letting it go to voicemail, but something made me pick up. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual. "Hey," he replied, his voice flat. "Look, I think I'm going to quit the shop. It's too much. Dad's been on me nonstop about taking over, and I just can't do it." I leaned back, rubbing my eyes. "He's still doing that, huh?" "Yeah, but it's worse now. You're not around to take the heat, and I'm the only one left. He keeps telling me to man up, like I'm supposed to just take the reins." His voice broke a little, like he was holding something back. "You were the buffer, man. Now he's on my ass 24/7. I ran a hand through my hair. I didn't know what to say. I thought about how things used to be, how Dad always expected me to do everything perfectly. I didn't think Josh could handle it on his own, not like I had. "You don't have to do this, Josh. You know that, right? You don't have to live his dream for him." He was quiet for a long moment. "I know, but I don't know what else I'm supposed to do." He sighed. "I don't want to be like you, always working, always trying to make him proud." My stomach twisted. I hated hearing him say that. But it was true. That's what I'd done for years. I took a deep breath. "Josh, listen. I'm going to be blunt with you. I know it's tough, but Dad's never going to change. He doesn't see you the way he sees himself, and he sure as hell doesn't see you the way he sees me. He's got this idea of who's worth it, and if you're not fitting that mold, he won't make room for you. That's why I left." He was quiet again. Then, slowly, he spoke. "That's messed up." I nodded even though he couldn't see it. "Yeah, that's why I had to get out. It was never going to get better as long as I stayed." I let the silence stretch between us, then added, "You need to make your own choice, man. You can't let him keep pushing you around. If you want out, take it. Do what makes sense for you, not for him." Josh exhaled like he'd been holding his breath. "I don't know what I want. I've been thinking about going back to school, but then I feel like I'm throwing away everything he's worked for." He paused, almost like he was asking for permission. "What if I can't live up to it?" "You don't have to," I said. "You don't owe him anything. You don't owe anyone anything. Just figure out what you want, and don't let anyone tell you it's not enough." He finally laughed a little, a short, tired sound. "Thanks, man. I'll think about it." "I know you will," I said. "But just remember, it's your life, Josh, no one else's." He was quiet again, and I could hear the weight of the words hanging between us. Then, in a softer voice, he added, "You know, you've got a point. I don't have to live up to Dad's shit. Maybe it's time to figure out what I really want." I stayed quiet for a second. I wasn't sure where this would go for him, or if he'd really follow through, but hearing him say it out loud felt like something. Like maybe he'd stop trying to please Dad and start thinking for himself. "Good," I finally said. "That's all I'm saying. You'll figure it out." He let out a breath, the tension leaving his voice. "Yeah, thanks. I'll let you know what I decide." "Don't wait too long," I said. "You'll be the one living with it, not him." We said goodbye, and I sat there for a minute, letting the weight of our conversation settle in. It felt like I'd given him a push. I hoped it would be enough. Josh and I started meeting up every week after that. Not just brothers anymore. Now, we were two men trying to figure life out. He started talking about things he'd never said before. He told me he might not want to run the family business. The thought of it made him feel boxed in. "I might just want to travel," he said one night, looking off into the distance, like the idea was still foreign but worth considering. "Maybe go back to school. I don't know." I leaned back in my chair, nodding. "You can do whatever you want, but you've got to own it, Josh. Don't let Dad push you into something you don't want just because it's what he expects." Josh stared at his drink for a moment, turning it slowly in his hands. "I don't want to disappoint him," he muttered, almost to himself. "You're not disappointing him if you're doing what's right for you," I said. "But if you stay in that shop because you think it's what he wants, you'll end up resenting both him and yourself." He looked at me, and for the first time in a long time, I saw him actually think about it. I guess. I don't know. You've got time, I said. But make sure it's your choice, not his. A few weeks later, Josh called me late one night. I could hear the hesitation in his voice, like he wasn't sure if he was ready to take the step. I'm going to tell Dad, he said. I'm not taking over the business. I need you to come with me. I took a deep breath, knowing how big this was for him. I'll be there, but it has to be your voice, Josh, not mine. He didn't respond at first, but I could tell he was thinking it over. I knew he was scared, but I also knew he had to do this, for him. Not for Dad, not for me, for himself. That Saturday, I went with him to Dad's place. We walked into the living room, and there they were, Dad sitting in his chair, looking like he was already preparing for whatever was coming. Mom was at the kitchen table, busying herself with something, but I could tell she knew what was about to happen. The air was thick. Josh stood up straight, his hands gripping the back of a chair. Dad, he said, his voice steady. I'm not taking over the business. I don't want to do it. The silence that followed was suffocating. Dad didn't speak right away. He just stared at Josh, and then at me, like he was trying to figure out if we were messing with him. Finally, he said, You can't be serious. This is the family business. You've got to step up. Josh didn't waver. I don't want it, Dad. I never did. Dad's jaw clenched. You've got to be kidding me. You think you're going to find something better? You think the world's just going to hand you whatever you want? I could see the anger rising in him, the disappointment building up, and I hated that it was happening again. But Josh stood his ground, his voice still calm. I don't know what I'm going to do, but it's my choice, not yours. The silence after that was heavy, unbearable. Dad looked at both of us like he was seeing us for the first time, like we'd just thrown him into an alternate reality. This is bullshit, he muttered. You're just throwing everything away. Josh took a breath. I'm not throwing anything away. I'm just choosing not to live your dream. Dad stood up, his face red, fists clenched. Fine, he snapped. Do whatever you want, but don't come running back when you fail. Josh didn't react. He just turned and walked out the door. I followed him without a word. We didn't talk much on the drive back, but when we got to my place, Josh looked over at me. I did it, he said, a mix of relief and exhaustion in his eyes. Yeah, I said, you did. It didn't fix everything, not by a long shot, but it was a start. For the first time, Josh was making a choice for himself. I just hoped he wouldn't regret it. The next day, Mom called. Her voice was quiet, hesitant, like she wasn't sure how to bring it up. I don't agree with how your dad handled things yesterday, she said, the words coming out in a rush, like she'd been holding them in for a while. I didn't know how to respond. It wasn't like her to ever speak against Dad, not directly. She'd always been the peacekeeper, the one who smiled through it all. She paused, then said, I've always admired you, the way you stood up for yourself, but I never knew how to stand up to him. I didn't say anything right away. What was there to say? I had spent my whole life feeling like I was the one who had to hold things together, and here she was, admitting she didn't know how to speak her mind. Finally, I asked, Why did you stay, Mom? There was a long silence before she answered, and when she did, her voice cracked just a little. I was scared of being alone. I leaned back in my chair, taking that in. She'd stayed for all those years, not because she was happy or fulfilled, but because she was afraid of what would happen if she left. I could feel the weight of her words. It made sense in a way. She had always looked like she was just getting through the day, not living it. We talked more honestly than we had in years, and it felt strange, like we were both seeing each other for the first time. She told me about things she never shared before, the frustration she had with Dad, the things she wished she could have done differently. It wasn't a huge breakthrough, but it was something. A couple days later, she started texting me recipes, little things she thought I might like. I hadn't heard from her like that in ages, not without her checking up on me or asking if I needed anything. She also asked about my job, and for the first time, it felt like she was interested in me, not just the strong one she'd always relied on. We had lunch a few times after that. The conversations weren't always easy, but they were real. She wasn't just trying to fill the silence with small talk or keep up appearances anymore, and I wasn't pretending to be the one who had it all figured out. For once, I could see her as more than just my mom. She was a person, someone who had been stuck in her own patterns, too scared to make a change. It was slow, rebuilding whatever we had left. But it felt different. For once she was treating me like more than just someone who carried all the weight for everyone else. She was seeing me as her son again, not just her pillar. I wasn't sure what it would look like long term, but for the first time in a while, it felt like we were both moving in the right direction. One fall evening, I opened the door to find Dad standing there. He looked awkward as hell, like he wasn't sure if he should even be there. In his hands, he held a six-pack of beer. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice hesitant. I wasn't sure if I was ready, but I didn't shut the door in his face. I stepped aside and let him in. We sat on my porch, the cold air crisp around us. He didn't seem comfortable, but neither did I. For a while, neither of us said anything. The tension between us was thick, years of silence and resentment hanging in the air. Finally, Dad spoke up. "Josh is drifting. Mom's been quiet. I can't fix it." He paused, glancing over at me. "You think maybe I messed this up?" I didn't sugarcoat it. "Yeah, you did." The words felt heavier than I expected, but they were true. It was the first time I had said it to his face, and for once, I wasn't holding back. He didn't flinch, just stared at the ground, like he was letting the weight of it sink in. I exhaled, then added, "But you can still do better." Dad looked up at me, his expression unreadable. I didn't know what to expect, but he just nodded slowly, like he was processing it all in real time. I could tell he didn't know how to fix it, didn't even know where to start. He wasn't even looking at me the same way anymore. There was no anger, no harsh judgment, just quiet. Like he was finally acknowledging that something had gone wrong. Then he said it. "I'm proud of you, son." It was the closest thing to an apology I'd ever gotten from him. His voice was low, almost reluctant, but the words were still there. I didn't know what to do with them. Part of me wanted to feel relief, but another part of me just felt empty. Those words didn't erase everything. They didn't take away the years of being ignored or treated like I was the backup plan. Still, I nodded. "Thanks." We sat there in silence for a while. He cracked open a beer and handed me one, but neither of us said much after that. The air felt different, though, like we'd reached some kind of moment, not a resolution, but a shift. Maybe it wasn't too late for him to change. Maybe it was. Either way, I didn't need him to make up for everything. I wasn't looking for him to fix things anymore. I had done that on my own. Finally, I said, "You'll figure it out, Dad, but you need to let Josh find his own way. He's not you, and he never will be." He didn't argue. He just nodded again, his eyes softer than I'd ever seen them. As I walked him to the door, he said, I'll try harder." I didn't say anything, just watched him leave. I didn't know if that would be enough for Josh or for Mom, but for me, it was enough, at least for now. It was a start. And sometimes, that's all you get. Over the next year, things evened out. Slowly, but it happened. Dad started easing up on Josh. He didn't push him to take over the business anymore. It wasn't that Dad completely changed. He was still Dad, stubborn and set in his ways. But there was a shift. He stopped treating Josh like a failure just because he wasn't following the script Dad had written for him. And Josh, he started to breathe again. He found work he liked, landscaping. It wasn't the family business, but it was honest labor, hard work, not tied to expectations. It seemed to make him happier, and for the first time in a while, I saw him stand tall, like he wasn't constantly carrying the weight of trying to be someone he wasn't. Dad even helped him buy a used trailer to start his own gig. It wasn't much, but it was something. Josh didn't ask for much, but you could see the pride in his eyes when he pulled up in that old truck, trailer hitched behind it, ready to do his own thing. Mom softened too. She still stayed in the background, but she wasn't as silent as before. We had lunch every now and then, small things, but it felt real, like she was finally seeing me for who I was, not just the strong son who kept the family from falling apart. There was no more pretending she didn't know what was going on. She talked to me about things, and I listened. I didn't need her to fix everything anymore. I didn't need her approval, but knowing she was trying, that she was showing up for herself too, meant something. As for me, I stayed out on my own. I didn't rush back into the family dynamics. I visited, but it was always on my terms. No more showing up just because I felt like I had to. No more pretending things were fine when they weren't. I was building a life that worked for me, even if it was different than what I thought I wanted. It felt like freedom, the kind I didn't even realize I was craving. I got promoted to shift supervisor at the call center. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. The job didn't feel like a dead end anymore. I was good at it. I had my own rhythm, my own role, and I wasn't chasing anyone's approval. I moved into a better apartment across town, closer to work. It was small, but it was clean and clear. No more shared spaces, no more living under anyone else's rules. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't carrying the weight of family expectations. I didn't have to keep things together for everyone. I was just living my life. Not perfect, but real. And that was enough. One Saturday, Josh and I grilled burgers on his back porch. The smell of sizzling meat mixed with the crisp autumn air, and for the first time in a while, everything felt easy. The way things used to be when we were kids, before everything got complicated. Josh flipped a burger, then leaned against the railing, looking over at me. "Hey man," he said, his voice quieter than usual. I wanted to thank you. If you hadn't left, I don't think I would have figured out what I really wanted. You going back was the best thing that ever happened to me." I looked around at his place. He had a dog now, a decent little house, and looked like a man who could handle his own. The kind of guy who had finally figured it out. I could see it in the way he carried himself. The weight was gone from his shoulders. I took a swig of my beer and leaned back, giving him a little smirk. "You figured it out yourself," I said, keeping my tone light. "I just got out of the way." Josh chuckled and shook his head. "Yeah, but you were the one who showed me that I could do more than just follow Dad's path. I owe you for that." I shrugged, trying to brush it off. "You don't owe me shit. You did the work." There was a silence, just the sound of the grill and the occasional bark from his dog in the yard. Dad still isn't warm. He's tried to change in his own way. It's not the apology I wanted, but it's something. Sometimes that's enough. He'll call me randomly, talk about whatever's going on in his life, and we won't fight. He doesn't ask for my approval anymore, and I don't ask for his. We just exist in the same space now. It's awkward, but it's real. Mom visits more often, calls to ask about things instead of tell. She still doesn't know how to show up fully, but it's different. She's trying, and that counts for something. We talk about work, or her garden, or something small and normal. I don't need her to be perfect. I just need her to be there. The biggest change? I don't wait on anyone's approval anymore. That's the one I've really earned. The peace that came from realizing I didn't need to keep bending myself to fit their expectations. I did it the hard way. Not by winning them over, but by walking out when I needed to, when it was the only choice I had left. And I'd do it again. No hesitation.